Have you ever wondered why the more you learn, the lonelier you feel? The deeper you think, the more disconnected you become from the world around you? This isn't just your imagination. There's a strange truth to the fact that profound thinking can often feel like a curse. Throughout history, those who have dared to think differently, those who have challenged the status quo, have faced rejection, isolation, or worse, ridicule. From the philosopher Socrates to the scientist Galileo, the more brilliant the mind, the greater the resistance they faced from society. But why is that? Why does society seem to fear deep thinkers? It's not that intelligent people are wrong. They often see things others don't. The issue lies in the discomfort their insights cause. Think about this. Have you ever met someone who is physically stronger or wealthier than you? Most of us don't feel threatened by that. In fact, we might even admire their strength or success. But when someone is more intelligent than you, something different happens. The mere presence of someone who thinks on a higher level can make others feel small. And it's not always about the person's behavior. It's about the uncomfortable mirror they hold up to the rest of us. Why does intelligence provoke such an intense reaction? Psychologists have a term for this: the mirror effect. This means that when a deep thinker walks into a room, they don't just share new ideas. They reflect back everyone's limitations, and that can make people feel exposed. Think about it. If you've ever been in a conversation where someone's intellect far exceeded yours, did you feel admired, or did you feel like your own knowledge was being questioned? For many, this leads to a feeling of inadequacy, even if the deep thinker hasn't said a word. But why do people feel this way? It comes down to a basic human instinct. People don't mind being around someone physically stronger or someone with more wealth. But when faced with a person who excels intellectually, it challenges the most intimate part of our identity, our sense of self. We don't just define ourselves by our appearance or bank account. We define ourselves by our thoughts, beliefs, and ideas. When someone questions those, it feels like a direct threat to our core. Throughout history, brilliant minds have often found themselves isolated from society. This isn't a coincidence. The discomfort people feel in the presence of deep thinkers is a product of their own ego, the part of them that wants to protect the image they've crafted of who they are. This is what happens when someone like Socrates or Galileo comes along. They don't just challenge ideas, they challenge the egos of those around them. And yet, this fear of deep thinkers isn't new. It's been happening for centuries. When someone questions established beliefs, they aren't just asking for a new perspective. They are asking others to confront their own ignorance. And people, by nature, avoid that. It's easier to dismiss the thinker than to face the uncomfortable truth they might be offering. Let's reflect on something. Have you ever tried to share a complex thought in a casual setting, only to be met with a lack of interest or, even worse, an awkward silence? This is more common than you might think. It's not because deep thinking is inherently bad at socializing. It's because it's intimidating. When people encounter someone with a higher level of intellect, their brains go into defense mode. Instead of engaging in deep conversation, they shut it down. This isn't a conscious decision. It's a natural reaction to feeling intellectually inferior. Now, you might think that the more confident someone is, the more likely they are to be respected, regardless of intelligence. And you'd be right. In social settings, confidence often trumps intelligence. We're naturally drawn to people who seem certain of themselves, even if their ideas are superficial or unoriginal. This explains why individuals with charisma or emotional appeal can gain more followers than someone who challenges the status quo with complex ideas. Think of all the viral influencers and motivational speakers who thrive by telling people what they want to hear. Meanwhile, the deep thinkers, those who ask difficult questions, struggle to find an audience. This is a paradox. The more someone seeks the truth, the more they become disconnected from the majority. Think about it. In the age of social media, where opinions can spread like wildfire, the most intellectually demanding content often gets drowned out by catchy, bite-sized sound bites. This is why many deep thinkers find themselves sidelined, not because they lack the ability to communicate, but because their ideas don't fit neatly into the fast-paced, attention-grabbing world we've created. But is this fear of intelligence something that can be scientifically explained? Actually, it is. Studies show that when people feel intellectually inferior, areas of the brain linked to fear and threat perception light up. This includes the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for triggering a fight-or-flight response. In simple terms, intelligence is perceived as a threat on a primal level. And why? Because throughout human history, survival depended more on social cohesion than on individual intellectual prowess. To survive, you needed to fit in. If you stood out too much, if you questioned too much, you risked being ostracized. And isolation, as our ancestors knew, could be deadly. This fear of being left behind still exists today. When an intelligent person enters a social environment, it disrupts the group dynamic. It forces people to reconsider their own beliefs, their own status, and their own position in the social hierarchy. This discomfort triggers the same survival instincts we've carried for millennia. In fact, research from Stanford University revealed something fascinating. The way people perceive intelligence depends largely on context. In one-on-one interactions, people tend to feel less threatened by a deep thinker. But in group settings, where status is more important, the fear response spikes. People instinctively compare themselves to the intelligent individual, and if they feel inferior, they may even try to undermine that person to protect their social standing. This is why intellectuals often find more meaningful connections in private conversations, where their ideas can be discussed freely rather than in larger, more competitive groups. What makes this dynamic even more complex are the cognitive biases that shape how we view intelligence. For instance, the Dunning-Kruger effect explains why people with less knowledge often overestimate their intelligence, while those who are more knowledgeable tend to be more self-critical. This creates tension in conversations, as those with limited understanding may dismiss deeper ideas, believing their own perspective is just as valid. Additionally, there's something known as status quo bias, the human tendency to favor familiar ideas over new, challenging ones. When deep thinkers introduce disruptive concepts, it makes people uncomfortable, as they'd rather stick to what they already know than entertain a new idea that could challenge their worldview. In the modern digital age, these biases have been magnified. Social media algorithms favor engagement over intellectual depth, meaning emotionally charged or controversial content gets far more attention than thoughtful, nuanced discussions. As a result, complex ideas often get lost in the noise. The more intellectual someone is, the harder it becomes to distill their thoughts into the quick, viral content that thrives online. The world, it seems, has become less interested in intellectual rigor and more focused on surface-level entertainment. So, what does this mean for those who are deep thinkers? It means they face an uphill battle. Society isn't just rejecting their ideas, it's rejecting their very way of thinking. The forces working against them are biological, psychological, and cultural. This doesn't mean deep thinkers should abandon their ideas, but it does mean they need to understand the forces at play in the world around them. If society rejects intelligence, then what does it embrace? The answer is simple: comfort. People prefer predictability over truth. They seek pleasure and avoid discomfort, even if it means turning a blind eye to reality. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, known for his brutally honest views on life, believed intelligence wasn't a gift but a curse. He argued that the more intelligent a person is, the more they struggle to connect with the world around them. This is because, unlike most people who seek comfort and pleasure, deep thinkers seek truth, even if it brings them pain. Schopenhauer viewed life as a constant struggle between the will to live, our basic desires for comfort, pleasure, and survival, and the will to truth, the intellectual quest to understand the deeper reality. For most people, the will to live dominates, but for deep thinkers, the pursuit of truth often takes precedence. This makes them feel alienated in a world that values distractions over contemplation. As Schopenhauer famously said, a high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial, and this is the ultimate paradox of being a deep thinker. The more you understand, the more you realize how little most people are willing to engage with the depths of reality. The more you question, the more isolated you become. But this isolation isn't a weakness, it's a byproduct of your pursuit of truth. And so, the deep thinker remains an outsider, always questioning, always seeking, always searching for meaning in a world that prefers illusion.